and welcome to the meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mick Radley and I will be chairing the meeting. Members, before we begin, please can I remind you that this meeting is being broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. As we move through the meeting, please can I remind everyone present to turn off their microphones when they're finished speaking. Before I proceed with this evening's business, please can I welcome representatives of the Cabinet, Councillor Tom Cunningham and Councillor John McKee, and Phil Myers, the Head of Finance, and also to those members who are attending this evening for item 6, which is scrutiny of the Council budget. We also have in attendance the Management Board, Tracy Hedford, who's with us for agenda item 5. I'd also like to welcome our new scrutiny officer, Amanda Lidsell, who is assisting me this evening. Miss Amanda, you're very welcome. I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Please can I have apologies for members of the committee. I don't require apologies from those members who are unable to attend for item 6 as part of the members' development evening. So far, I have apologies from Councillor Courtauld and Councillor Raymond. Are there any other apologies? I think we're all here. The rest of us are all here, so I guess that's clear. So I'll now proceed with item 2, which is declarations of interest. So do any members of the Performance Management Committee have any disclosure pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. No? Okay. Okay, there are no declarations, so I'll now proceed with item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee on 23rd of November 2022. Councillor Dervish, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Rose, thank you for that. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate by a show of hands. That's unanimous. Thank you. So the minutes are approved. I just need to initial these. Okay, right. Now move on to item 4, which is public question time. Members, I can confirm that there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So, members, in order to assist the smooth running of this meeting, I've considered it appropriate to reorder the agenda items, and as such, will now proceed with agenda item 6, which is scrutiny of the Council's budget 2023-2024 update. Members, the report and presentation slides for this item have been circulated to all members by the governance team. Before inviting the Cabinet to make their presentation, I would like to set out the running order for this item. Following the Cabinet's presentation, I would like to invite members of the committee to put forward their questions to the Cabinet. This will then be followed by questions by non-committee members who are in attendance tonight as part of the member development programme. So, please can I invite Councillor Tom Cunningham, Deputy Leader, and Councillor John McKee, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Transformation, to make their presentation. Over to you, councillors.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. A very good evening to you and a very good evening to members of the committee and colleagues also in attendance. And thank you very much once again for the invitation to update on the latest of the emerging budget for 23-24, taking into account the changes that have occurred since you were last presented with the detail of the emerging budget back in November. And as this is the last of the budget meetings of this administration, in the Leader's absence, can I take the opportunity to thank you as Chairman and the committee for their work and scrutinising the budget over the course of this 4-year period. I think there is a sense that the way we do our budget process at Braintree, regardless of whether you're administration or opposition, I think we do it in a very thorough and inclusive way. And it's thanks to the scrutiny committees and the way that we facilitate these things that we're able to do it in that way. So thank you for that. There have been some changes since November 2022. It does seem to be that the devil is in the detail, and the detail becomes available ever later in the budget process. I will just reflect briefly as an overview, and then Councillor McKee will look at some of this in more detail as we move through the presentation. In terms of key changes from November 22 to the Provisional Local Government Finance Settlement, there has been a net increase in cash grants from those that were assumed for 23-24, but includes a one-off funding guarantee. So there will be considerable uncertainty over subsequent years. The CPI-linked increase in retained business rate income has changed. We now know there is a new homes bonus allocation of £1.4 million, and it has always been the operating approach and the political direction given regard to new homes bonus, that isn't just siphoned away, that isn't just buried away in the council's reserves, that is invested, that is ring-fenced for specific for the specific funding opportunities that in the past have tended to support both community and economic infrastructure, as well as those projects that support those endeavours. The government has allowed, through the council tax referendum principle, an increase of council tax up to 3% or £5 for shire district councils. We've had greater clarity on the Essex business rate pool and other grants that impact on our expenditure plans, homeless prevention grants and core housing benefits subsidy. Considerable funding has become available through that. And there was a consultation period on our budget, and our cabinet member consultation period of 4 weeks, and the cabinet member submitted a response on the 13th of January. Other key changes from November 2022. Pension fund, higher ongoing employment rate offset by a reduced contribution to reserve. Staffing budgets have been updated for the current establishment and other inflationary adjustments. There has been additional investment income due to increased interest rates. In terms of growth bids submitted for the budget process, there has been a reduction in the requirement of a project management officer, known as a PMO, by using existing resources already in the organisation, and therefore there's a small downward change in savings proposed. Extra council tax-based growth, the district is growing, and more detail on the parking protocol. Further changes anticipated relating to commuter car park charges, and also a re-evaluation and an updated estimate in terms of the funding for the Silver End Bowls Club. Some adjustment to that proposal has levered in a potential saving there. So that's the overall of the changes, and Councillor McKee will now speak to our proposals and how they have moved on since we last presented to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Just first of all, what are the aims of this budget? They haven't changed significantly. We clearly, I think you're all aware of this cost of living crisis. We've had a task and finish group which made recommendations, as you're all aware of. So there is, throughout it, you'll see there is a funding effectively to look after residents as best we can through the significant cost of living crisis caused by the three things that we're all aware of: interest rate rises, energy costs, and the inflationary effect of, it was 10%, is now coming back somewhat, but still a significant cost on our residents. It also, I'll just remind everybody, it has a significant effect on the council services, energy costs around the freighters, so we're in the same boat as our residents when it comes to the effect of the cost of living crisis, or the effects of the cost of living crisis, same effect on the council. We're still continuing to invest in service and key priorities, and if you read the council papers, you'll see a significant investment still in those key items such as play equipment and leisure areas. So we're not stopping investment in this budget. We are protecting our frontline services and maintaining service standards. There are, wherever we can, there are minimal changes to services, and you'll see that we're not taking the axe to services to save cost. When you come to the end of it, you'll see actually we go to reserves rather than balance the budget through cost of service provision. We have focused on efficiency and increasing our income over service reductions. Significant amounts have been done by both officers who've done efficiency savings of some almost £400,000, and the what they call member savings, which were a significant, about £400,000 or thereabouts of savings or income increases. So it's been a pretty soul-searching exercise to get to those efficiency and increasing our income. So we're addressing our financial challenges while still strengthening our financial resilience. We're not going to give up being a prudent council where we are not recognising the importance of having those reserves, because it serves our residents to be a well-managed, well-supported council through the finances. Next slide. We went through consultation and engagement, and we invited comments from stakeholders and partners, including all parish and town councils, on options and choices. And I think those with parish council would know there's been a significant communication between, in letters, for instance, in the parish grants, that those have all been well signalled to your parish councils. The meetings with town councils have been taking place. There was, as we discussed earlier, a performance management scrutiny committee which went through in some detail on both the 23rd of November and the 1st of February. Today we're going through that scrutiny. Business newsletters, Braintree District Council, District Business Facebook, press releases, website, news page, social media and staff briefings. So this has been trawled through multiple times. What's in this, basically in the budget and being proposed. Next slide. We have of the 1.4 million effectively of the new homes bonus. We've set aside an extra £1 million or so residents impacted by the cost of living crisis. So we are not putting that into reserves. We're not putting it into running the operation. What we're doing is over 2 years, using community groups who know where these people and these services are required, working with them to actually support our residents with an incremental £1 million of that new homes bonus. We're building on the good work already in place at recognising the recent scrutiny review, so we've built that into the budget. And the 3-point plan to deliver over the next 2 years is providing food security, helping the most vulnerable, and increasing access to facilities that enable physical and emotional health and well-being. And I think we'd all agree that those are probably the right priorities for the use of the £1 million to support our residents during this tough time that they're all feeling. Next slide. We're still investing in our services and improving the way we work. The A12 street cleaning partnership, which with other councils in Essex, this is a main thoroughfare through our district. and we're trying to do it more efficiently and effectively by combining the efforts of all of the authorities along the A12 and having a concerted team, if you like, so that will be less expensive but more effective by doing it in partnership with other authorities. We're continuing the community grant scheme. I'm sure that every councillor will be pleased that 1.2 million, I was about to say, well, £1,250 was be allocated for every councillor again in the so we're not cutting community grant scheme. We're investing in economic growth, I said earlier. We're strengthening our project management. You heard Councillor Cunningham talking about the Programme Management Office. That's enlightened self-interest, I would say. We've got still have aspirations to deliver Maltings Lane and other projects. And one thing we've found through our recent management of major projects, that the one thing that we need to strengthen up is the way we actually manage and look after those projects and report on them internally. So where things might be need to be focused on, we know them sooner and better, run by a professional project management office. We've put over £900,000 in new capital investments, I think I said earlier, sports and leisure, community facilities, council office, and IT and operating equipment. You know, we as a council rely upon state-of-the-art modern technology. We haven't invested for many years for a few years, not many, few years, in updating some of our IT services, and this is the time in which we're going to spend some money in updating the IT and operational equipment. Next slide. Right. Over £1 million of extra savings and extra income have been identified. I think I talked earlier about the two sources there. Some of the officers of doing things better, and some of which members, not actually members, do it, but we have to agree that we're going to either increase income or reduce cost, and over £1 million of that has fed into the budget. Discretionary fees and charges have been carefully reviewed, and it's attached to your papers as a appendix. We've considered changes to our parking protocol, including tariffs. We haven't done it for some years, and think now is the time to actually look at those parking charges, particularly given that what happened during the pandemic. And now, as people are coming back, we need to look at those very carefully and have a new tariff. We've confirmed our intention to introduce a charge for correcting green waste, but any benefit or any costs associated other than £200,000 which is identified in the next budget year, there is no benefit, financial benefit, been factored into this budget because we haven't made the decision whether or not to do that. We'll make that decision on March 13th at a cabinet meeting, but it is definitely worth exploring significantly to give us the ability to look at whether we can close the budget gap for 24-25 and beyond, because we have a structural gap in our budget effectively, and we think we discussed that last time, Chairman, that this was a structural gap rather than a short-term gap, and this is one where we may be able to do that, but it requires cabinet decision on the facts rather than emotions. Next slide. Right. Addressing the financial challenge. You remember last time we were here, I think we were talking about 1.4 million. That's now come down to 644, which you notice we're closing that 644 gap using balances. So we're not trying to balance the budget by cutting services, as I said earlier. We're doing it by actually using our balances to do so. It still leaves an MTFS gap. You know, it's not mathematics. If you don't save the million or thereabouts this year, the MTFS doesn't change its complexion. It just shifts it out by a year. So if you look at everything you don't take out of the budget this year, the baseline still has got that structural gap in it. So we are still left with, you know, if you push things out, you just get the next budget gap just gets bigger. So I just want to make that point quite clearly. The LGF, the local government financial settlement, has shifted the budget gap with government funding in 24-25 is uncertain. Next slide. Our proposals addressing the financial challenge. Some of the activities are underway. You're aware of the investment and development programme that we've had now for some years. That will continue. We're reviewing all of our commercial services right now. And I think we, again, discussed that the last time we were here, that there's a piece of work going on to look at where we can do more things in our commercial activities, but also how can we do things better in the commercial activities we've currently got. There is an asset management review. I think you're probably all aware that we have some north of £40 million of assets that we get income from. That income is north of £3 million a year. We're reviewing those asset bases to see which assets are really performing, which ones need restructuring, which ones need removing from the asset register and being replaced. So that whole piece of work is going on, and it will lead to a report coming back to Cabinet and Council, which should show an improved position on our asset base and how we're managing it. On the services, I think we may have discussed last time, we're doing a zero-based budget reviews, of which there will be project management wrapped around it to make sure we get the benefits we can. Those who are not aware of what that means is we take every service back down to its core cost, work out the cost and benefit of every strip of the service, and then build the budget back up again to see whether you can, in fact, make it more efficient and effective by stopping doing things, or, in fact, charging for things that you're not charging for now, or doing things in partnership with others. All those things come out of understanding exactly what in a service, how much you're spending, and what that is benefit, that not all cost, not all revenue, what benefit that's providing for the resident. We're significantly into shared service and collaboration with other authorities, and I think last time we discussed procurement as a good example. Procurement is one of the services we're leading on with other authorities, and actually the team that's doing that, I think, have just won an award as being one of the best teams in collaboration across Essex authorities. So we're being recognised for being really good at leading that collaboration activity. And clearly, one of the things that's coming down the track, and I won't even try and explain the benefit of it or otherwise, is the devolution agenda, which is definitely becoming a reality. Next slide. The recommendation. The recommendation is to increase the council tax by 2.5%, giving a bandy tax rate of 194.31, which is an extra 9 pence a week for a bandy taxpayer. Again, I was on a press interview, and I reminded the interviewer that we were still, regardless of 2.5 or what it is, we're still one of the lowest tax rates in Essex, and way below the Shire district average, because we've always had a policy of, of trying to be a lowest tax council as we can. The Council Tax Support Fund will give discount, and this is from the government, a local tax support of up to £25 for those who are on the local council tax support scheme. So those who are on the lower income are already getting some relief from some of that increase. And we're providing additional discretionary support for others alongside our current hardship schemes and help through citizen advice and our own staff welfare officers. Next slide. I think it's next steps. Next steps is quite simple. We hope the government can, remember, all of this is still provisional until it's time the government actually confirm that what we are working as way of the numbers from the settlement. They will confirm that early February, we hope. It's not confirmed yet. On the 6th, we go to Cabinet. On the 20th, full council, where we'll consider this and set our council tax. I'm happy to take questions.
Good. Well, thank you very much for that presentation and the update on the budget. I'm sure it will generate some debate and questions, which hopefully will be able to help us with answering and commenting on those. So I'll take the next step then is to open this up to for questions from the Performance Management Committee first, and then once we've exhausted that, we'll then hand over to other members to join into that process. So Right. I think Councillor Everard caught my eye first, so go on, let's go with it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm particularly worried about the proposal to charge for the green waste, and it'll mean that a lot of people won't pick up that charge and join. I think probably it's going to be an encouragement to fly tip, and it must be a hell of an administrative burden, I would imagine, as well. And there's all sorts of other things on how it would work, which I think are, well, I'm just not very happy with that at all. And all, on top of that, we've got the Essex County Council with their waste areas are now making it so you have to book up a time to go, and you've only got a small slot of that time. So it's adding on to this green waste. So I really do disagree with this.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to comment? Yes?
I'd love to answer that. I won't answer the Essex County Council booking system because I know about as much as you do about it, and Councillor Cunningham may choose to, but it's not. This isn't in this budget, I would say, and it's not for this council to decide whether Essex County Council, depending upon, regardless of my opinion, I can't comment because I've got no control over that. What I can talk about is green waste charging. It's not been agreed, so it has to go through a due process before it ever gets agreed. So that's the first thing. Second of all, we and I've made it abundantly clear, we do have a structural gap in the MTFS. So this council has to find some way of closing that 2 million gap. And if anyone in this room thinks you can keep taking reserves to close that gap, or balances to close that gap, will come a time when you have no balances or no reserves left, and then you have to take really tough decisions about what you cut. No, I don't mean charge for it, but cut. Now, what I would say to you is that the precise details of how this will get implemented are not in the public domain because they're not known to anybody other than officers who are preparing a paper to be considered as to whether it's something we wish to do or not. That's number one. There are two issues which I think one should think about, which is there is an equity issue about the way we collect green waste. 20% or thereabouts of residents don't get their green waste collected in a green bin, and yet they're paying the same council tax as those that are having their bins collected. That's not what's behind this decision, but that's a fact. Second of all, you asked about fly tipping. The experience of our councils that have implemented this have found there's been almost no fly tipping due to charging green waste. Okay? So the scaremongering about upright citizens will become illegally fly tipping because they can't get their green waste collected. And let's just hypothesise a moment. It's £50, £60 a year. I think is specious. Those people with gardens who love the environment and they have a green bin are unlikely to suddenly decide they're going to put it in the back of their car and drive it onto some lay-by and tip it. And it's not the experience of people who've tried it. However, it is true that we're looking at this from two angles. One is, can we maintain our recycling rates at the same time as can we charge for some charge towards the cost of green waste? Because if you don't, there will be a time, as I say, that and it's a significant amount of money, that we would be able to offset the cost of by charging something for green waste to people that value it. Now, the options, if you don't value it, you can take it to the Essex County Council waste. You can have composting bins provided for free and put them in your garden. So there's lots of options other than having a chargeable bin from the council. But I will stress, the decision not being made is, and there's no, in this budget, there's other than the small amount of money to set up the investigation as to whether it's the right thing to do, is in the budget, but there's no benefit of, or anything, or cost of change of the recycling in the budget that we're proposing now. Sorry, long answer.
Indeed, I guess there's going to be quite a topical point through the evening. Okay, Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your report, John. Very comprehensive. I'm not going to go into specifics on the budget. What I really just want to get your feel on, your take, is we are all subject to pressures from outside this authority, whether it's world pressures, government looking at their budgets and whatever. Is there what I would term wriggle room in your budget, John, if we could proceed through the fiscal year? We set the budget now, say, in March, but what happens if things change fairly drastically, say, by August or September? For instance, I've just got my bill from Eon, and I had a fixed deal for 2 years, which I was paying £150 a month. The new one is £254 a month. Well, I didn't budget for that. So a lot of people won't have budgeted for that. Food's gone up nearly 17%. So what I'm saying is, John, if fuel goes up, how will that impact on operations? Because they run all their trucks. And how can we mitigate that? Do we cut somewhere, or do we can't keep applying reserves to it, John, because we're just, as you rightly said, we'll run out. So I just wondered, what sort of steps do you have, or would you consider, that should things need to change, and when would you change them through the fiscal year? Thank you.
First of all, let me just, I may ask Phil to come in here, because his team use professional advice and forecast where markets are, I know forecasts are forecasts, and therefore they can fall out of but the government uses the same forecasting process that we're using, which is, and therefore we budget not on the best case, but we budget on the most likely case from the advice we give them from both HMG, but also from our external advisors. So it is a conservative budget with a small c that allows for the fact there is fluctuations in energy costs. So we're not predicting that those energy costs will return to the for instance, or inflation, or well, actually, interest rates benefits it the other way. You're aware of that. So if interest rates rise to 4%, as they're likely to do, you, the taxpayer, benefits because we have cash reserves, cash deposits, because we collect a lot more than we need before we disperse it. That goes into short-term, overnight funds, effectively, which we were getting 0.25%, and now we're getting 3.25% or something. Mm-hmm. And if it goes to 4%, we will earn more income from those short-term deposits in the. So there, some of those offset. Recycling rates go up. How much we get for our recyclates go up when energy costs go up. So some of those are offsetting for us. So we're more protected than maybe you as a private citizen, or I'm a private citizen, are protected from some of those costs because of the way in which the budget is constructed. But Phil can maybe comment about, what we would do if there was a drastic, black swan event, how we would react to it.
Yeah, so I think, I think as John mentioned there, I think the volatility in the budget is mixed, and so there's ups and downs on that. And as you said, we've tried to take a sensible basis for the assumptions in the budget report. I think this is where it comes back to the issue about making sure we maintain our sort of financial resilience, and very much that is around sort of levels of reserves and balances. So whilst we are using some of our balances this year to address the budget gap, what we're clearly marking is that's not as sustainable, because we need to keep some of those reserves and balances in situ to managed that volatility and those unknowns and that. And I think you may have seen we've recently increased the sort of minimum level of balance that we've suggested we should keep. So we've traditionally had it set at 1.5 million, and that was recently reset to 3 million. So I think it's about making sure that we're keeping that sort of some level of prudence in the sort of those balances that we're holding, so that we can deal with those events that we might not foresee or might change significantly at this time. So.
You make a good point, Phil. We're about to redo the risk register. If you remember, we had a members' evening. That's where we encapsulate the likely financial risks that and what's our mitigation strategy and what's the plan to deal with it should it happen. So, we are risk aware, and therefore that doesn't mean to say there's not be an event that we haven't predicted, but it's highly unlikely unless there's a meltdown in the financial markets that no one saw coming, which I think happened in a couple of times in the last 50 years. But if that happens, as Phil says, we have sufficient reserves to keep the authority with its current plans moving forward for our residents.
Okay, thank you for that question and answer. Councillor Derbyshire, you have a question, I believe.
I do, thank you very much. Firstly, thank you for all your hard work for the Cabinet and also the officers involved in putting the budget together. Fantastic, extensive, and agree with many, many of the points. Sorry to say, green bin collections. I appreciate it's not a decision that's been made and it needs to go back to Cabinet, but I just wonder if you could take these questions to Cabinet for us, please. I've spoken extensively to all of the parish councils within my ward and residents, and these are the points that we would like to take to Cabinet. You may already have the answer to these, but if not, then if you take them forward. What is the cost of the implementation? What will happen to the green bins that aren't taking up the service? What percentage of households need to take up the service in order to make it financially viable? I'll let you write these down. And if we choose not to do this, where else can we offset the loss that we need to make up? For instance, if we had to make an addition on council tax, what would that percentage mean? Or is there some other way that we can find it? For instance, I welcome that we're keeping the community grant of 1,250, but if we reduced that and kept our green waste collection free, would that be an option that could be discussed as a benefit? Just put out there. And the concerns have already been raised by other councillors of fly tipping, but we agree that I don't think people are just going to suddenly start breaking the law just because we're charging for green bins. But it was a concern of residents that I have to put forward to Cabinet. And that is all I had. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that extensive range of questions. I'm sure that's good.
Well, thank you for that. And I have written them down because, and I'm not going to answer them because the decisions haven't been made of any of those. I mean, there is some feedback on data we're looking at, but until such time as the paper's written and we can look at it in its entirety, it would be remiss of me to try and answer that. What I can answer, though, is where would we... The cost of the service is north of £600,000 a year. Council tax, 1% is about 120... 25?
100.
Divide 125 into 600. That's 4% rise in the council tax. We'd have to go to referendum principles, and the residents will be up in arms about a 4% rise in their council tax, because everybody will pay that, regardless of whether they did or didn't have a green bin. So, I mean, we're not thinking. Trust me, we're not thinking about that. We could find it elsewhere. We could cut services. I could give you the sort of nuclear option, which is, I'm not going to do it, but the nuclear option is we don't have to do it. Now, no one's suggesting we're going to not do it, but you get my drift. And the next administration will have to face the financial reality that we're facing, and it's not going to get better. You know, Bill Rose makes a really good point, which, you know, if inflation stays where it's high, services will cost more, and residents will use us more. That's the problem. You've got increased demand because we've got more people who are suffering, and they suffer. They come to the local authority, not just us, but the county, to get some help. So we've got greater demand, and our own service is under pressure from the same things. Somebody will have to make very difficult decisions, and this is one of them that has to be looked at. That's all we're saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beavis, I think you were next.
Thank you, Chairman, and some of this a bit repetitive as well. So I'll take the green bins first, and I appreciate not all of the questions can be answered, but it's just a couple of bits I wanted to pick up on. I mean, first of all, we mentioned in this budget, I think it's mentioned in the MTFS about approximately 200k being used to look at this. I don't think that's a small amount. I think that's quite significant, actually. It's the price of somebody's home. So I think we need to be a bit careful on that word small, actually. It's a significant amount of money being put into the MTFS on a scheme that actually we haven't even looked at Cabinet yet, and we haven't actually seen the working papers. So I think it's a bit cart and horse for me on that one. So and also, you know, there is a green legislation coming down the track that actually says we might not be able to charge anyway, and actually the councils that are charging probably got bigger problems on their books than we have, because they're going to have to find this gap. So it goes back to the point that Councillor Dervish made, and also you made in your presentation about every service is going to have to be looked at, because if we can't charge for these bins, then if it is a structural gap, as you say, year on year, then we're going to have to find the cost. But I'm the same with my parishes. I've gone out to them, and clearly big headlines on the front of our local papers as well. You know, people are really, really worried about this, and details always is to be looked through, and I think the business case going to Cabinet still needs to be looked at by all of us. So that's first point. Sorry, I'm backtracking here a bit, but completely agree with the point that Councillor Cunningham made about the great work of the officers and the Cabinet. I think the way that we do things here and to give everyone an opportunity is really transparent and inclusive. I appreciate the £1 million new home bonus over 2 years for the cost of living crisis, and I wonder if all of that money's not used up and there is a surplus, what are the plans for that? I would imagine it would go back into revenue. I don't know, but I'd like to have the answer on that. Appreciate the 1250 on the councillors' grant scheme. I'm a great advocate of that, and I would support that. Cost of living crisis working group, I think, identified a 1% rise in council tax, and the group went with that. So a little bit surprised at the 2.5%. And finally, you know, as many councillors in this room are, you know, long-standing councillors, and, you know, always remember, you know, we're going for growth, we're going to build more assets, we have built more assets, that's going to bring us in more funding. And so, in some respects, sort of, it's very sad that we find ourselves in this situation. I'm not completely convinced that the public understand all of this. I mean, I certainly didn't go to my parish council and say, look, we need to put this cost in because you're going to have to fill the structural gap of the council. So I'm not 100% sure it's been properly relayed to members of the public. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, would you like to respond?
I'm trying to understand the question in there, actually. So, was the question that about the £200,000 that is in the budget for green waste, and why it's in there? It's in there to do the staff work that's required to set the scheme up. If we have to set it up in this year, because we will, if you want to start green waste collection paid for at some time in 24-25. It doesn't just happen magically. So there's a whole bunch of work that has to go on. As you rightly say, the answers to the questions that have been asked, the answer to the question, what about the green bins and where do they go? What do we do with them? All that stuff isn't yet resolved. There's some ideas coming forward, and there's some apocryphal stories, and there's some anecdotes from other. But there's a piece of solid work has to go on before we would start the work. You asked a question about what will happen if the £1 million isn't distributed. It will be. That sum won't even touch the sides, actually, to the cost of living crisis. So that the people we're going to work with, the partners, will be able to find perfect homes for that £1 million don't forget it's over 2 years, not 1 year. Have I missed any question? Oh, you were disappointed about the 1%, right? Given my comments about the gap is already taking, how much do you think that the 1.5% would change the budget by? I'll give you the answer: £156,000. So I'll listen to someone wants the 1% council tax. If they can come up with £156,000, okay, of savings, reduction in cost, I'll listen to it. But no one's come forward with £156,000 because all they want is cheap, lower tax. I mean, am I misrepresenting your position on this?
No, Councillor Key, you've made it entirely clear.
But
it's a different point of view, but
no, it's not a point of view. It's when you want to reduce the council tax. And remember, council tax 1% is structural as well. Does you understand that? Which means if you do 1% this year, you're taking the baseline forever at 1%. So next year, if you've got a structural gap, you've got a bigger structural gap if you don't raise council tax. Now, I will tell you, most of the local authorities we are aware of are going to raise it up to the cap that they're allowed to go to. We've decided not to do that. So if you will, that's a 0.5% discount from where we could have gone with our council tax increase.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody else? Oh, indeed, yeah.
Answering some of that. I think Councillor McKee covered off that very well. I'd just like to deal with this issue of sort of labour the point a little bit about structural deficit. Nobody likes increasing council tax. Nobody likes taking difficult decisions, or potentially difficult decisions, over service reduction, but you can kick the can down the road as long as you like. And it may look very good on election leaflets, it may look very good when you're giving your report to parish councils of what you would do and delay the financial difficulties to a later day. If you keep doing that, Mr. Chairman, you get to the situation where you find yourself in the grotesque chaos of not being able to put forward a balanced budget acceptable under any sort of condition of financial good practice or sound financial management. And I think that's the difference between being in opposition and actually being in administration. You have to take the long view. And I would just push back a little bit on the point Mrs. Beavis made over investments and properties and buildings and bringing forward. This authority's investment programme over the last few years, the strategic investment programme, has been based on delivering economic, social, community value, but the double value of that expenditure to the taxpayer is the fact that it generates the revenues to help deal with the financial challenges. The benefits of those investments will be seen over the life of this MTFS and beyond. If we hadn't have done that, we're looking at a process of direct taxation, further cost saving, and other difficult decisions. So, and you wouldn't have had the community and economic benefit that those investments bring forward. So, again, it's taking a slightly holistic view and appreciating that there aren't any easy answers to the difficult questions. I don't think, and as Councillor McKee alluded to, you get economic fluctuations once or twice in a 50-year period. The level of inflation, because of external forces that everyone has been subjected to over the last 6-7 months, certainly unprecedented in my lifetime, and I think I bow to the experience of colleagues who may be a little more experienced in terms of life than I am. These are unprecedented times, and actually this authority is in a very resilient position thanks to sound financial management. And whilst there are difficult decisions to be made, it's in a far more comfortable position than many comparable authorities, not just in this county, but in the country as well.
Okay, right. Let's move on. Any other questions from this side? No, I know Councillor Everard, and I've got a couple of questions myself. So, Councillor Everard, you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was very impressed when I saw all these enterprise buildings and everything. I've been looking through, but a bit busy, just to see what the feedback, what the money is coming back. And I can't see anything factored anywhere, but this should be significant in what it brings into the council, and it's did write something down, but anyway, it should be significant. Can you give me an idea of what the projection will be? And
I thank Councillor Everard for his question, and it was lovely to see him and many others again last Friday for the tour. And it was great to have Conservative representatives there. It was great to see representatives from the Labour Group, and of course, Mr. Chairman, yourself from the Housestead residents. So it was good to see that 3 of the 4 groups on the District Council were represented on that tour. But the way we will be reporting the proceeds of these investments will be through the investment development programme, and that will be factored into the quarterly financial performance management. So the financial performance management paperwork that comes to Cabinet every quarter.
With what coming today?
Well, yeah, absolutely. When it comes to next quarter, going forward, you will start to see the proceeds of those investments included in the investment development programme, because Councillor Everard's absolutely right. Reporting the actual extent of those proceeds and how they're working towards this MTFS position is extremely important.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll have a couple of questions now, and forgive me if one of those is about green bins, but a slightly different twist on it, I guess. In the budget proposals, the shortfall is 644,000 for next year. I presume, can you confirm that that includes 200,000 for the money for the green bin evaluation setup or whatever? First.
No, that doesn't. So the 200,000 that's referred to, it's in the budget report, it's seeking almost like an in-principle decision to allocate that money from out of balances. Yeah. So that's part of the 644,000, and that's predicated on that Cabinet agreeing to do that, to introduce the charge from when they consider that in March. So that recommendation about 200,000 is sort of an in-principle at this stage, still subject to that later decision.
Okay, and by the second. I guess the benefits of that are no longer not in this plan at all at this stage until that decision's been made, I guess. Okay. And the other part of the question is what actually is the estimated annual benefit once it starts? And it will be subject to the detail that you have in terms of how you manage it. But I don't know if you've got any sort of view on the annual benefits of that is likely to generate.
I can tell you we've seen that there is an options paper which has not yet come to any decision of what the options are. What I will say is that all of the options have a significant effect upon both 24-25 and a growing benefit, as you would imagine, throughout the MTFS period, because given the estimated take-up, clearly it's not going to be 100%. So there is some experience from others of what that take-up might be, but not, and therefore there's a build-up as the residents come around to use it more and more, or the green bin bin usage, but we've not agreed any of those numbers yet. So it will make a benefit. It would reduce the cost of the service. This is not to make a profit. I'll just be really clear. This is not us trying to sell green bin waste collection as a profitable service. It is a very expensive service to operate, and it's to try and defray some of the cost of it. That's the attempt.
Okay, just at this stage with no idea of scale, which I guess...
Well, no, until such time as it's gone to Cabinet, it will be foolhardy of me to put numbers out there. Indeed. Because it would just hostage to fortune, wouldn't it?
Indeed, I understand that. And the second part, or third part actually of the question is, from your presentation, you have confirmed it as a confirmed intention to do this. So whilst you haven't made a decision, you clearly intend to do it, because that's what you've actually said in the presentation. But isn't this effectively an additional tax on many people who actually are likely to need this service and effectively already pay for it in their council tax, which they clearly do? And if the previous estimate of £45, which I understand that's going to be something, that was the previous estimate you declared, is implemented, if you then put that on top of the Band D council tax of £194, which is what proposed by this man, that effectively is a 23% increase in what those residents will be paying for the same service today. So effectively, it's a stealth tax. It's a tax by the back door, if you like, open, but it's effectively a stealth tax, and a level that's really significant. And it doesn't actually gel. I know that we're in difficult times, not quite as difficult as it was in the 1970s, I think, for some of us that remember that. But nevertheless, but difficult times nonetheless. And this council or the administration declared that it is a low tax authority, and we've said this many, many times. But effectively, this is a tax, because a lot of people will still take this up. Not everybody, a lot of people will take it up. So effectively, it's a tax by another means, and a hugely significant one. And when you look at the figures, if it's whatever the figure is, whether it's £45, if it's a fixed figure, then those people on lower bands are going to be hit a lot harder in percentage than those on a high band, for example. And it just seems unfair at all. I understand that I don't have any magic solutions as alternative, I understand you. But nevertheless, as an overall proposal, unless I'm missing something, it doesn't seem to stack up to me.
Well, first of all, it's not a tax, because if it was a tax, they'd have to pay it. You can't not pay a tax. No resident will ever be forced to pay for a green bin. It's entirely, and I keep reminding people, this is a discretionary service. So it could be that we launch this service and nobody takes it up, and then we would, in fact, have no green bin service and would save a whole lot of money. That's the result of introducing, if we were to introduce it, and nobody took up the service because no one saw the value in it. So this is a service that people would only pay for if they saw the value. And the alternative, of course, is to put the green waste in a composting bin in your garden, or have a free composting bin delivered, or a number of them delivered in your garden, or you could put it into some bag and put it in the back of your car and take it to a tip, with all of the cost that's included in doing just that. So it's a service we didn't, before 2010, I think, 2010, we didn't collect green waste at all. It was introduced for reasons of improving our recycling rates. That's what it was introduced for. So this is a response to a budget gap that we have to address it with some cost reduction or income improvement or a mixture of the two. And this is thought a serious way to make that gap closed, rather than, not doing some things that we currently do that are non-statutory, or doing statutory service in a cheaper way, in fact, to balance that budget. Because I think, as Councillor Cunningham said, there is a requirement that you balance the budget year on year, you know as well as I do, and you're balancing a budget against increased demand, increased financial pressures, and the taxpayer, the council taxpayer, by raising council tax across the board, would be unable to sustain that increase in cost. So, we're determining at a council meeting, a cabinet meeting, and then a council, that this is the right approach to closing that gap.
Okay. Chairman, if I might just add to that, it is, of course, the administration is setting a budget which full council will decide upon. It is, of course, the absolute right and opportunity of any other group on this council to put forward budget amendments, provided, I think, they meet the financial sort of propriety and resilience test of the Section 151 officer. So the opportunity is there.
Thank you for that opportunity. Okay, we'll move on. One more last question for me. I'm sure that the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure has had the opportunity to read this committee's scrutiny report, which expresses concerns about the slow delivery rate and the implementation of Section 106 monies, and the high level of funds being held by BDC. I think at the last count it was about over £7 million and taking something like 5 years to implement. And this is a problem that's going to get greater as more and more houses are built and we get more and more Section 106 money coming in. Part of this team's recommendation was to look at resourcing in this area to speed up delivery. And I'd imagine that may well have budget implications if indeed that was considered. So I just really like clarification and confirmation as to have any additional resources being included in the budget to address this issue. Thank you.
I don't know. There've been no added resources from our current establishment in this budget. However, I am aware that there's a conversation going on between your committee and the Cabinet Member for Planning as to Section 106 and how that is administered and how it's reported, which I think is one of the things you're seeking. I won't speak for her because I can't, but I know that there's a conversation and a paper about to be before Council, I think, that addresses some of those concerns that you have.
Yes, I think the Cabinet Member will be responding to the report in full, and I think we'll let her do the response. Yeah. I think Councillor Sprague respond to that at the appropriate time.
Yes, I appreciate that, and it's actually on the agenda, I believe, the 16th of March Cabinet meeting. We'll obviously go through that. But as we're going through a budget process, the cost implications of that, I would have thought, ought to have been considered as part of the budget process. The other aspects of it clearly are require debate and agreement. But from a financial point of view, I was just concerned that whether anything was being done from a budget point of view to make provision to try and redress that particular recommendation.
And again, as I say, I'll let the Cabinet Member respond to that, but what we would say is there has been considerable additional resources over the life of this four-year administration into the Planning Department. That is obviously a decision that has been taken with other conflicting budget pressures and other conflicting budget requirements. So, as I say, I think the point has landed, Mr. Chairman, and as I say, we'll let the Cabinet Member respond to that when it comes to Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, that's all questions from me. Does anybody else on the committee have any other questions? No, it looks like. Okay, folks, I would like to take questions from other members. So we do have 3 hands up. So I'm going to go Councillor Pell first, please, and then I'll come across.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is also about green bins. Like other councillors, I've been lobbied quite strongly about this, that people are concerned about fly tipping. They're also concerned that people will just put it in a black bin and hide it in their dustbin, which your refuse people are not going to have time to look through to see if that's the right thing to do or not. But I just wondered, because I know that money is a problem, if it's been considered that maybe we could have a service once every 4 weeks instead of once every 2, because it's not everybody that's filling a bin up every 2 weeks. I'm just looking at that, if it could be a compromise. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Who would like to answer that one?
Well, yeah. I'm not sure that the compromise, and I have to take advice from people that know way more about collecting bins than I do, would actually satisfy the residents' requires. I mean, I can talk about personally about my green bins, and I've got 2 of them. They're full every 2 weeks. I mean, if I could get a service every week, I'd take it. But I've got a large garden. I don't think that would solve it. And I understand that there is some concern, but I think about it. But until such time as the scheme is public, with the frequency, the cost, and the full around it, the full sort of what the scheme might look like, I think it's too early to be critical of it, frankly. But I don't actually think, and I think that officers here might be able to advise me, but I think I'll do that later. I don't think that would work as a compromise, frankly. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you for making that suggestion. Councillor Garrard, then Councillor Abbott, then Councillor Wright. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in the budget on item 27, the capital programme, that there is money available for Millennium Slip Roads, 2.5 million. I'm just wondering where that stands at the moment, and if it doesn't go ahead, if Essex, I believe, are match funding that, so the money is sort of ring-fenced. If that doesn't go ahead, when will we find out whether or not it's going ahead? What happens to that 2.5 million?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. The 2.5 million is still held in a named reserve, which is for the Millennium Slips. You're quite right. There's match funding. Well, it's not match funding actually. There is there's incremental funding greater than our contribution, so it's not matched in that sense, from both Highways England, Essex County Council, held in a reserve. Essex hold one, and until such time as there is clarity, and currently that is still held by us in a reserve. If it were to be, and there's no indication that it would be stopped at the moment, if it were, it would be returned from where it came, which is into New Homes Bonus.
Thank you. I do have another part to my question. Is the current money currently being invested? And what sort of return, now that interest rates are fairly decent, would we get from that? And would that offset anything here? Would that help in any way?
I can answer that quite easily. That's exactly one of the reasons why, if you look at how much our short-term interest income has risen in the last 12 months, is because those sort of reserves are not. It's not held in a Barclays Bank down the road, so we can pull it out in a moment. It's held in deposit treasury management, look after all of our deposits, and they put them in the best place to hold a reserve until such time as the estimated need for that to be withdrawn from reserves and used for the project it was needed for. So actually, it's probably in a money market account with one of the major banks, earning about 4%. 4%, 3.5%?
3-4%.
Okay.
So, Councillor Abbott, yeah? You're next, I believe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, just a quick, 3 questions, if I may. First of all, a quick observation that although the process is always welcome, I'm not aware that there's been any changes in the budget this time round as a result of input by non-administration councillors, which is unusual. And in that, in particular, I would also highlight the fact that the joint scrutiny review on cost of living did say keep the council tax to 1%, and that's been ignored effectively by the administration, which is a shame. We support the switching from the long-standing principle of capital only to revenue of the 23-24 new homes bonus to support communities. Exactly right. However, if that is the priority, why is the council tax going up 2.5% with the addition of the proposed green bin charges? And isn't it the case that actually it's not 9 pence a week? The bill that people will see, this is a bit of back of the envelope because it's based on what county you're going to do, but the actual bill, if people want the green bin still, they're going to see is more like £100 a year increase. That's my first question.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Councillor McGee.
Let's take the first one. 1% council tax, I think I've already covered with a colleague of yours, unless you want me to do it again. Switching new homes bonus, thank you. Yes, that's the right thing to do. Why is it, by the way, no resident will get any cost in this budget year for green bins. So the 2.5% is the 2.5%. So we won't get a £5 or £25 or £100 charge for any green bins until 24, 25, the next budget year. Is that? Have I misunderstood the question?
I'm aware of that. Yeah.
So let me understand your maths again.
Back of the envelope calculation is the actual bill people will see if they want to pay for the green bins is roughly £100 a year increase in their council tax band D.
In 23, in this budget year?
Following year, yeah.
Oh, we're not looking at next year's budget.
But what I'm saying is, you were talking about only 9 pence a week. Well, even if you leaving aside the green bins, it's much more than 9 pence a week. What they'll actually see in their bill, because what you're talking about is BDC on its own. We're not factoring in all the other precepts.
Well, sorry, we can't discuss here what Essex County Council or the Fire Commissioner does with his budget. It has we don't have any control over it, and it just that we have to combine our tax with our tax rises with their tax rises, and you're right, there will be a much greater interest than 9p a week, but we're not responsible in this room for deciding what Essex County Council do on the 9th of February, etc.
Okay. No, we're not, but I just think we should be absolutely upfront with people. They're not going to see a 9 pence per week increase in their council tax.
Well, they will see a line on it from Braintree District Council, which is the rise we've talked about, which is 9p a week. Right.
Second question.
And by the way, there weren't any green bin charges for incremental addition, so there's no addition for that in 23, 24.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
Second question. The administration proposes setting aside £200,000 for planning for the green bin changes and the charges. And by the way, it's not 20% who don't use green bins currently. It's only 12% who currently don't use green bins. Would you like to comment on the fact that that would pay for 4 years' worth of maintaining the parish street cleaning grant and maintaining recycling calendars for households, which are, I think, valued by many households? And has these early papers on green bins identified the cumulative impact on our recycling rate of charging for green bins, of not having the calendars, and the County Council's proposed booking system for recycling centres?
You want me to comment on that? I will comment on Essex County Council and its recycling booking system, it's nothing to do with. We can't affect it, whether it's right or wrong. You were a councillor once in Essex County Council. I'm sure you'd have fought it very hard there, and some of our members may well do that. Okay, but we can't make a decision about that here. What we can make a decision about is, as we've discussed endlessly tonight, and we did expect it, we're looking at a way of which we can come forward with proposals to look at a structural deficit in our budgeting process, which, you've seen the numbers like I have, £2 million. And by deferring it, 1% council tax rise will make it worse. Not charging for green bins, we'll have to find some other. If that's not what residents want, then there'll be something else we have to do as a council to close that gap. It won't go away by wishing it weren't there. So you have to face the financial reality we've been looking at with this budget. The MTFS is what it is, and you can wish it wasn't that way. So it's responsible management to look at how you can look at every service, and clearly, as this is a discretionary service, it's not legislatively required. Now, one of the questions I didn't pick up was the government and their advice from the waste management bill that's going through. All the feedback is because of the cost that the government have to pick up. If they were to reimburse all those councils that are in fact currently charging, 70% of them charging, would be pretty extraordinarily high. So all of the feedback we're getting is they're likely not to make it mandatory. You give it for free. It's likely to give councils the freedom, and we know of other councils near us who are taking that decision this year rather than deferring it until next year, so we can do it much more considered way. Does that answer your question?
Well, sort of, but it does get a bit tiresome to be constantly told off as if we're school children. I mean,
I'm not telling you off.
And letters in the paper saying we're not interested in financial matters when we are. And just to confirm what Councillor Cunningham raised, yes, we will as a group be proposing a costed series of budget amendments.
Excellent.
At the meeting on Treasury. Final question.
I was wondering if I could respond to some of that.
Yeah.
Through you, sir. Chairman.
Indeed, yeah.
I'm going to address my comments.
Then we'll move on to the third question.
To you. Yes, I think in terms of, I think we have to be very careful if we're conflating paying for adult social care and the sensitivities, the complexities, the cost that's involved with dealing with the most vulnerable society and a green bin in one political argument. Forgive me, I think that may come across as a slightly cynical conflation, but I just make that point. I have to say, I am a little bit surprised that Green Party, in the third decade of the 21st century, seems to want to be dying in a ditch over bits of cardboard, in terms of calendars, in terms of communicating a message. It doesn't seem to be tight. It doesn't seem to totally chime with their environmental credentials. And the other point, it's very difficult to measure the cumulative impact of recycling between ourselves, Essex County Council, because, forgive me, I don't think it's reported cumulatively. We have our recycling targets, the bits that we're responsible for. The county have the bits they're responsible for. Could have a wider conversation about how you streamline government to make that easier. But in terms of performance management metrics, they are different. And just a final point, if I may, just declare as a member of Essex County Council, obviously greater clarity, I believe, regarding the booking of appointments for the waste facilities will become clearer in the days and weeks ahead. My understanding was that you had to book to use these centres during the COVID pandemic. I understand that that went down very well with the public in some regards. And actually, as we saw during the pandemic and those lockdowns, people were gardening a lot more and it worked well. So I think we'll just have to wait and see in terms of the impact of that, again, of a policy which this authority has no control over.
Okay, Councillor Abbott, your last question.
Yes, and thank you for your indulgence, Chairman. Thank you very much. Yes, finally, and on a more positive note, hopefully, In welcoming, although at a much reduced level, the capital funding for Silver Ends Bowls Club, which is at now only £5,000, it does say in Appendix G and H that the money is going to pay for a dropped curve, CURVE. So, typo, yes. Continuing the positive theme, myself and Councillor Wright very much support the additional funding for a comprehensive management system for cleaning up the A12, which the ward we represent covers a fair chunk of that goes to the district. It is in a terrible state, and it's not just by the way at the slip roads. If you go around the Kelvedon bypass, it's appalling. And I know that's not the fault of the council. I'm not saying that for a minute, but whatever we can do to improve on that. And also, I don't know whether there's anything we can do in terms of trying to catch people, whether it's possible to have CCTV systems which can catch people going that fast who are throwing litter out. I don't know, but it did occur to me on the way here that catching a few people and publicising it might help as well to deter, because it's an appalling habit that people have of just using our verges as dumps, basically. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, can we?
I would make one comment on that.
Ending on a positive note there.
It is a positive. No, it's a very positive note, and I'll take the A12. I don't know about CCTV. I'm sure Highways England have got a view on, or whatever they're called now, as whether you do. But I will say that it's an officer from this authority that's led that conversation about the A12. So this is one of the leadership collaborative ventures because we recognise that the authority recognises it's a major thoroughfare through our district, and it needs to look better than it does. And by combining the authorities, we think we'll get a better result and actually a better cost of service. So thank you for that.
Okay, I think Councillor Wright, you put your hand up next, yeah?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to talk about green bins as well. You've made two statements tonight. One, that the green bin cost is only going to cover expenditure, and a little while later you said the green bin tax will be used to close the budget gap in 24-25. And I believe that second statement of yours is probably correct, because I'll give you some figures. You've stated in your proposals that the cost of the green bin is about £600,000 at the moment. The 90% of the people take that up, which is about 60,000 people. That works out at about £10 per cost per person who's using the green bins. You're proposing to cost or charge 45, and your new figure of £60 tonight, between 45 and £60. So at the moment, the green bin costs £600,000. That £45 will raise 2.6 million. So are you expecting that the green bin cost is going to grow, or the cost of it is going to grow very fast over the next year, or are you going to make a profit out of it?
Well, given that actually the whole business case has not been finished yet, but I will answer it. No, we don't. Right. There's no anticipation that there'll be 100% take-up of the green bin once the charging comes in. There's anticipation that some people will in fact choose to keep the bin at home, not use it, not have us collect it. That's likely to happen. The experience of other authorities is that it grows over time. So initial reaction is, I'm not willing to pay for it. Then the reality of having to deal with your green waste responsibly and sensibly dawns on people, that they have to put it in their car and take it to and so on. So the usage grows over years. But the objective is, and it does close the budget gap because it's no longer entire cost, so you get income to defray some of the cost. In an ideal world, you'll get enough income to defray all the cost, so it's a cost-neutral service. If that were to happen, and that will not happen in 23, 24, 24, 25, unlikely, at some stage in the future, another administration could sit down and say, wait a minute, we're making, and there's guidance about this. We can't do this as a profitable service, and then reassess the service at that point.
Yeah. So.
Right. So it's not for profit.
Yeah. Right. And so if you charge £45 per bin, that will mean about approximately 13,000 people will take that service up.
Well, that's not. That's unlikely.
No, to raise the 600,000 to cover it.
If every person came to their green bin, and he's right, it's I thought it was anyway. So let's say 80% of the people do it currently. But if that continues, you're right. Then it will be an extremely profitable service. But that's not the experience of other authorities.
I don't think we can. Can we call a halt to it there, please? Because I think we can't do the sums here tonight. Right. I think we need to wait for the proposal to come forward. Then we can comment.
I quite agree that most people won't go and fly tip. So I think they are responsible. Yeah. But everybody who's talked to me about it and accused me of putting their green bin tax up, me, as a councillor, and they've said what they're going to do is put their green bin waste in the black bin. Right. So it's going to cost more to collect the black bins, because even the bin man stopped me at my drive the other day and said, if people start putting all the green waste in the bins, we'll have to go back to the depot more often on their runs, because their dust cart will be overweight. So that's an extra cost.
Okay, I think we've had a big spectrum of comments on the green bins tonight. Let's see if anybody else got any other questions tonight from the audience. It seems not. Okay, wow. Okay, so where are we? So members of the committee, this agenda item is for noting only. Can I take it that the report has been noted? Can you please, by a show of hands, please? Okay. Thank you very much. That has been noted, members. So thank you very much, Councillors Cunningham, Councillor McKee and Phil, for your attendance this evening. Whilst you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, if you wish to leave, you may do so. And please, can I extend the same invitation to those other members who are also in attendance for the member development evening. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll just wait a few minutes until we settle. Okay, it looks like we've rearranged the room, so we're ready for the next item. So this is agenda item 5, which is the second quarter performance report, 2022-2023. Members, the report for this item is set out on pages 3 to 37 of the agenda. Can I please invite Tracy Hedford, the Business Solutions Manager, to present the report. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the report that you have in front of you sets out the Council's progress towards our corporate priorities as at the end of the second quarter, which was presented to Cabinet back in December. So as at the end of September, we have 17 projects that are complete, 43 that are on track and progressing well, although some of them have been through the appropriate change management process to amend the end date due to their being reprioritised or rescoped as necessary to accommodate any new or competing demands on the Council. There are 4 projects that have an amber status. They're mainly due to delays in their processes or their progress. They are around the facility of the delivery of the purpose-built medical centre in Sybil Headingham. That's amber because of the land transfer being delayed. The creation of the Garden of Remembrance at Bocking Cemetery, that's amber due to the original contractor withdrawing from the project. A new tender was published again in August, and the council are exploring options of using the Section 106 money. The other two projects are to develop the Whittam Enterprise Centre to provide small industrial units for start-up companies. That's amber due to the planning pre-app identifying a number of planning constraints, and therefore scheme design is being reviewed. And the last one is ensuring residents have access to the skills programme and education they need to access employment opportunities. That one was marked as amber because we're currently awaiting the outcome of the submission to the Shared Prosperity Fund. Obviously, we know about that now. At the time, writing this report, it was expected in the autumn, and obviously we could use that to better understand how we can utilise those funding for the skills and education. Moving on to the performance indicators, there's 9 performance indicators that have achieved or exceeded target. 1 performance indicator missed target by less than 5%, and 3 performance indicators missed their target by more than 5%. So the areas of underperformance in relation to the recycling rates, the percentage of land that falls below the cleanliness standards for litter, and the average waiting time for disabled facility grants, and the percentage of stage 1 complaints responded to within timescale. I'll just highlight some key achievements within the second quarter. So we had the Victoria Square development completed, and there was a ceremony held to mark and celebrate the completion of that. And obviously, as you're aware, that comprises of 70 bedroom travel lodge, there's 35 new homes, a Live Well hub, pharmacy, restaurant, the bus interchange, public toilets, car park, and a garden area that's complementing the Braintree's historic town hall. We had a new Love Essex campaign launched to highlight the fixed penalty fines for anyone caught throwing litter from their vehicle, with the slogan being "It's for driving on and not for littering on," and that ran throughout the summer. We had the volunteer awards that took place in August at the iConstruct Innovation Hub. They're in their 6th year, and they obviously continue to recognise and reward the individuals and groups who make a positive change in their and difference in their community and help to inspire others. The Kelvedon Neighbourhood Plan was formally adopted at full council in July. That brings the number of neighbourhood plans to 6. There's another 8 that are being progressed, and there was also a neighbourhood area for Whittam that was also approved in September. We had 644 children and young people supported during the school holidays with activities and a nutritious meal through the Active 8 Club organised by Active Essex and Community 360. We had the opening of the Plaza in July 22. That provides private offices, co-working space, shared meeting rooms, seminar rooms, conferences, event space and a cafe area. We had the Customer Service Excellent Assessment in September, and the council was successful in retaining the accreditation for a 7th year. We had 70 affordable homes delivered in the second quarter, so that brings the total as at the end of September to 160, and the housing service also prevented 61 cases of homelessness. We had 67 businesses contact us for business support and 230 new business startups across the district. And we managed to, in the first quarter, I reported on the performance of the processing of housing benefit claims. That was amber at the time, reporting at 10.93 days. And the team have obviously worked really well, and they've managed to turn that around to averaging 4.45 days in the second quarter, so actually coming within their target. One thing that we have done in the second quarter that you may notice is we've added a section around the climate change. So we're now actually reporting out on the action plan and the 73 actions that they've got under the climate change strategy. Obviously not detailing the whole of the 73 projects, but they've summarised the areas of progress within the second quarter under their themes within the report. So we're now going to be including that on a quarterly basis. We also obviously have information around staffing, health and safety and complaints. So in the second quarter we had 167 complaints. Of these, 161 were stage 1 complaints, 4 were escalated to stage 2, and then a further 2 escalated to stage 3 of the complaints process. Our sickness levels, I'm pleased to say, have remained low in the second quarter, averaging a 1.37 days per employee, and the percentage of staff that have not had any sickness is just over 68%. So I'll move on to the financial performance, even though you've had a kind of update, but the financial section of the report provides an update review of the financial position for the quarter. It examines the latest forecast of spending on the day-to-day service provision compared to the budget. It also includes a summary of the Treasury management activities, projected movement on the government, on the general fund balance, and a summary of the spend on the to date on the capital projects. So just to give you the highlights in respect of the financial position. So the forecast, as at the end of Q2, is a positive variance of 126,000. This compares to the adverse variance projected in Q1 of 721. That obviously triggered the implementation of the recovery plan that required all managers to review their services and identify opportunities for increased income, also look at savings and obviously defer any expenditure where they were able to. So recovery plans generated a net of 589,000, and that is obviously the main factor that has in the improvements that has now been reported in the second quarter. There were obviously other changes as well. That includes sort of like a downward revision to the estimated impact on the National Employers Pay Offer. Further net improvements across services were also projected, and the main changes being an increase in the investment income, a higher level of incentive reward under the Council Tax Sharing Agreement. So the updated projections will be reviewed to ensure that any ongoing items, if not already, are reflected in the 2023-2024 budget planning proposals. The projected change in the general fund unallocated balance is currently a net addition of 536,000, which gives an estimated balance as at the end of March of 6.6 million. Actual spend on capital programme was 4.6 million. Of that, 2.9 million was on the plaza, with 0.6 on the Manor Street regeneration project. I will leave it there, if that's okay, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It's a really good report, as always. Thank you. Right, Councillor Rose first, then. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you for the report, Tracy. Very comprehensive, as the Chairman said, as always. I just wanted to seek clarification, if you can, from one of the corporate priorities of promoting prosperity, which appears on page 21. And the thing I'm seeking clarification is that I've been involved with this some while ago, but it doesn't appear to be happening. And I'll quote what it says here. It says, develop the Whittam Enterprise Centre, providing small industrial units for start-up companies and SMEs. It goes on to say the planning pre-app has identified a number of planning constraints, and therefore the scheme designed is being reviewed. I'm a little bit nervous about that word, and it's got March 2024. When you say reviewed, is it a 106 problem, or have we got a construction problem or a location problem, Tracy? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know the ins and outs. I'll have to take that back through to planning or to the strategic investment team to understand the ins and outs of that, and I can report back.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to take a written answer if that's easier. Or
okay.
Dominic would like to briefly answer that one.
Very glad to be here, Chairman, and Councillor Rose. So the project currently is reviewing the Section 106 agreement that was entered into and the restrictions that has applied to the use on the land. So what at this point in the performance management report, we're exploring then some restrictions that meant on the use of the land and therefore the buildings that we could put on it. Actually, subsequent to this, we've had two further iterations of the plan of what we could fit onto the site. That's something that we've now taken to a market demand study to understand whether there's a market for the buildings that we think we can master plan on the site to then confirm the business case to move forward. So we're certainly progressing with the project. We've, as I suggest, I think we're on the second iteration after this report to understand what we can put on the land and hoping to take that forward in the next few months.
Yes, you want to quickly come back.
Yes, thank you for that, Dominic. It's just that it is out in the public domain about the Enterprise Centre, and it's not my ward, but I get a lot of feedback from people who live around there and from business within the town, and I just didn't want. They've got the impression that we're dropping it, and I can't give them an answer, Dominic. I don't know how this authority want to address that, or just wait and see if your bricks start appearing on the ground. I don't know, Dominic. Thank you.
So it's certainly a project that we're actively progressing. That's probably as far as I would go today.
I think that's a useful feedback. Thank you for that. Yeah. Right. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, Tracy, thank you for your comprehensive report as ever. And I'm not expecting a verbal answer, but I would really, it's a shame the Chief Exec's left actually, because I was hoping to catch his eye as well, but I'm sure that the team will feed this back. But it's about the Headingham Medical Centre and the AMBER. And I'm just very briefly, with the indulgence of the Chairman, going to give you just a very quick brief overview of this site, which started 10 years ago with over £1 million worth of Section 106. It was a big generation project for our district in the north, outside of Braintree. I'm just going to say that because I'm sure had that to sit in Braintree, it would have been delivered by now. So we delivered the work hub on stream, and there's another £1 million sitting there for improvements. Here comes the Chief Exec now for the Riverside Walk. And in fact, we as a parish council met with Neil Jones only a few weeks ago now, and he promised to put a written letter into the parish council on a complete update of the Section 106, and actually wrote to us a few weeks ago to say he's been really busy with other stuff, but he is going to come back to us. So really would be very keen to have an answer back from Neil Jones on the complete Section 106 and what's going to be delivered next, and are we going to get our Riverside Walk within the next few months, which we've been promised, and on and on. But I specifically wanted to talk about this AMBER, because this evening, Tracy, you said that it's a land delay. I can't think that we've had a full council meeting in the last 2 years when I haven't stood up and mentioned the Headingham Medical Centre. I've mentioned it at the last full council meeting, and on that night, and it's on webcast, the Cabinet member said, Councillor Beavis, that project has now been agreed financially, and it will go ahead. Now, I had a meeting with One Medical, who are providing the building, and they said it absolutely hasn't been agreed. It still sits at the Integrated Care Board. The financial case has not been agreed. So there are mixed messages, and I guess the point I'm really making is, could I also have a written response on what actually is the status of the Headingham Medical Centre, so that I can report that back to our parish councils and our residents? But very happy for that to be written. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's if you can provide that or arrange for it to be provided, then I think that'd be.
Yeah,
sounds
I
like
can
it would clarify a few things.
Yeah, I can look into you, obviously, but there will be an update coming out in the third quarter report as well around that. So this is obviously only in respect of progress up until the end of the second quarter, which is the end of September. So obviously there has, if there has been any movement, that will be reported in the third quarter as well, which is going to Cabinet in March. But we'll see obviously what we can provide in the meantime for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chairman, I would really appreciate a written letter on both the Neil Jones letter that we're waiting on and the update on the Headingham's Medical Centre. I would be really grateful. Thank you.
I'll take that back to the services.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Yes, Councillor Everard.
I was trying to find, I've got one question here.
Okay.
And another one.
Apologies, Councillor Everard. Can you use your microphone,
yeah,
please?
sorry,
Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry, Chairman.
Cool, I thought I was loud enough. Okay, is there anything in place to replace the athletics track in Braintree? It's in dire need for replacement. I just wondered if you can push that through as a question.
I can push that through as a question, and I can provide a written response in respect of that. So
Thank you. And the other thing was the trees. I don't know how many trees, but lots and lots of trees were planted. We had this drought all through the winter, the summer, I mean, and I just wondered, was there anything in process to water them and keep them, sustain them?
So you're talking about the community tree and bulb planting scheme that we had. So we had this question, I think, come up in one of the previous performance scrutiny committees, didn't we? So that was actually a community scheme where the trees were obviously given out to community groups. We did plant quite a few of those onto council land, and obviously it is then the council's responsibility to look after them. So they would have had schemes in place to sort of maintain them and provide feed them, water them, etc. Obviously, in respect of the bulbs and tree whips that we're giving out to community groups, we don't know really what would be happening with those. It's not our responsibility, but we'd like to assume that if you're going to be taking on that responsibility, you would look after them as well. You'd plant them and look after them. So.
Okay. Your question? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Tracy, I just wondered whether you could give me, if you know of any particular reason. I noticed that you say in the performance report, it says the number of people transacting online with us. First quarter was over 40. Second quarter was down to 30. Was there a particular reason for that? Do you know? Or is that cyclical because it's quite a dramatic difference? And my other question really was, I noticed the difference in quarter one, quarter two performance of collection rates of council tax. I presume that is going to, difference is cost of living crisis that's beginning to bite or was starting to bite there. And do you know at the moment if that is going to have any effect in the collection of the performance reports going forward? Because normally that has always stood up very well, and I just wondered if you had that information.
Okay, thank you. So in respect to the first one, the online transactions, the first quarter is always our best quarter in respect of that, so it will cover off anyone who may be sort of paying annually in respect to their council tax. We don't necessarily have too many of those, but there's obviously the second green waste charging bills that come out in respect of that. So there's a number of elements that will make up all of those transactions, but the first quarter is always a lot higher than what the following quarters are around that. So I can always provide some trend analysis around that if you'd like to see that, and provide the breakdown in respect of what the online transactions cover, if that's of interest. In respect of the council tax, obviously, yes, that is being monitored in respect of the collection rates. We are aware that cost of living may have an impact on that, and obviously we will be reporting out in the third quarter around sort of like the progression in respect of whether or not that is meeting target. So that's currently being looked at.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. The first one's a comment, really. Just really to thank officers for the tour of the facilities last week. I thought that was an excellent tour, and there were some councillors, Councillor Everard was with us, and it really did showcase a lot of the excellent work that's been done by officers and everybody involved in this process around Horizon 120, the Plaza Centre, the regeneration, lots of them. You know what they are. The projects are in here, and it was really impressive. So well done to everybody on that, and thank you for doing that, because it's a huge benefit, and it will continue, I guess, as well. I also think it's good to see the financial performance turning around from a negative to a positive, which is always a good thing, after quarter two. So we hope that continues. Also good to see a number of projects that are on track, but I become a little bit concerned when I see target dates changing, and I understand you've talked about there is a process for that, which I would expect there probably is, but and maybe it's reflecting changing priorities and things like that, I guess, perhaps, but really difficult when you set a plan for the year and then partway through the year you change the target date based upon new information. Well, the target date's the target date, I would argue, but it's a question of process, really, I think, this is a comment. The overall comment I have around these projects, and there's just one page of it here, a lot of the target dates seem to be March 23. And I'm not absolutely, well, in actual fact, I've no idea what it is you're going to achieve by March 23. We have a project title, which quite often goes beyond 1 year, and you have some details saying what the progress is. But how does that relate to the target date? I've got no idea, and perhaps it doesn't. I just feel that, I guess this is going to be refreshed going into the next year, perhaps there ought to be some consideration or just some advice there about having maybe milestones against a specific project, and you have some big milestones that, and focus the target date on the milestone, and then monitor progress against that, because otherwise I'm not quite sure. You read that, and yeah, it's a nice progress report, and there's a lot of good stuff happening. I'm not saying things are not happening, but if we want to be very objective about a target and achieving that target, then smart objectives, I guess, really it comes back to, which I guess most of us perhaps know those. So that's just a comment about the overall process. I've mentioned it before, but some of the officers involved in that process are here tonight, so maybe it's an interesting takeaway, perhaps for next time around. One particular one that does give me a little bit of concern is a bit parochial, is that, well, in actual fact, it affects Whittam as well, that Whittam and Helsted town centre improvements deliver physical improvements to the town centre of Whittam and Helsted. Target date, March 23. I'd be very pleased if that target was met. If that's what you actually are planning to do by March 23, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing it all in place. I know, and we know, that that is not the case. So I don't know. It's just an example. What is March 23? You know, it's sort of, it's a nothing in my view. But that doesn't detract from the work everybody's doing. I do understand that, but it's about process. So those are my questions. I don't really think that necessarily requires an answer as such, but perhaps just a takeaway comments.
No. Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we're taking that on board, and also we're writing on a new annual plan at the moment, which will come to Cabinet in March. So we'll be taking those comments on board and making sure that the end dates for our new projects and report moving forward will be more representative of what the action is.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Sorry, that's a conclusion of my comments. Questions? Anybody else before we conclude? No, I think we're having a load of shaking now, so I'm hoping some good questions there. Right, so if there are no remaining questions, we're asked to note the second quarter performance report 2022-2023 as presented to the Cabinet on the 6th of December 2022. Can I take it that this report is noted? Please, for a show of hands. That's unanimous. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, thank you, members. That report has been noted. Right. We move on now to item 7, which is the decision planner for the 1st of January 2023 to the 30th of April 2023. Members were asked to note this decision planner for that period. Before we do this, do members have any issues that they'd like to raise in respect of the decision planner? No? Some shaking of heads? No? Oh, yes, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Rose.
Really just allies to your question, Chairman, about the improvements to town centres. And it says here, landscape and consultant works at Whittam House at town centres. Proposed date of decision, 6th of February. So that's the decision date. So is that coming forward on that date or not?
I'm not sure. Yeah, we're getting some nods. Yes, that's coming forward for.
I can live with a nod. Thank you.
A decision on that particular point, which is not necessarily delivery of the project. Which is good that we're making progress, yes, albeit slowly.
Chairman, just to also assist with Councillor Rose, the decision panel went 1st to 6th of February. That agenda is already published and is available on Council's website. So, but just to remind members, the decision planner is literally a planner. Yeah. The dates that are mentioned are indicative dates. They obviously set the framework for the authorities' governance arrangements for cabinet decisions to comply with the legislation which cabinet decisions have to operate in. So those dates, if you see those pushed back, that's because we have to give notice of cabinet decisions. And where research reports are not ready, we are able to push those dates back, but never forward. But Chairman, just to sort of give members some assurances, should we have to put an urgent item on the decision planner, or we have to amend the decision planner where we are maybe have to bring a decision forward so we don't quite meet those requirements. We do actually consult with Councillor Raddy as the chairman of the PMB just to make sure that we have his agreement to do that, and then we issue a decision notice to that effect. So we are all very much transparent as to how we manage the decision planner and how cabinet decisions come forward on that plan. Just to give you those assurances.
That's fine. Thank you for that. I just want to clarify, Chairman, that Dominic should confirm that these dates are not set in concrete, are they? You know, as Emma rightly said, it's a planner. I just hooking it onto your question about March 24. This is February 23, so that's fine. I understand that, Emma. Thank you.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, any more questions? I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you, members. Do we have your agreement that the decision planner has been noted? Show of hands, please. Yes? That's unanimous. Thank you. So, thank you, members. The decision planner has been noted. Okay, members, this item concludes our business for this evening. I will therefore close the meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee at 21:10. Thank you for your attendance this evening, and to those watching via the YouTube broadcast, and good night.